try to make things that you really like, because if you don't like it, you're going to give up. There's a lot of stress when building products, not just pre-launch, but post-launch as well.
I think we've got River on the line now. River, can you hear us?
Yeah, all good.
Good morning. Hi, River. Lovely to have you on board.
Good morning.
Yes. So we've just spoken with Anya Rana from Advice, a large large business out there in the industry, marketing and advertising consultancy. Now, what I really like about you, River, aside from your personality, and you're one of our most active members here in the house, is you're sort of at the other end. You're really on the coalface every single day of UX and graphic design. River, welcome. Can you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. So I've been around here in Talent Garden for almost 2 years here, and I love it. I highly recommend it if you guys want to get a freelance or get an office space. It's a wonderful place here. So I'm a game developer of 7-8 years, and I've shifted to developing social apps recently. The first game I produced was so just to give you guys a background, I wasn't very good at school. I was like a D- student throughout. So I'm at the same university. So I wasn't expecting months, but I made my first game in 8 days for some game jam. And I remember when I was uploading it on that night, I had a friend of mine tell me, River, can you come down? We're late to the party. Like, hang on a second, to upload it. He was like, it's not like PewDiePie's gonna play it. The next morning, PewDiePie plays it. And that kickstarted my games career. So afterwards, I've been deeply involved in development, UI and UX, just trying to make things as 3D as possible, as human as possible, as physical as possible. That's my personal philosophy. And yeah, I've sold 2 products, game products that were for a few million units. And now I'm starting to develop a social app for Denmark. That's about pressing one button to meet people for activities. If it's cooking, football, partying, and other things.
It's a nice little introduction. Yeah, PewDiePie, that's the really one of the biggest YouTubers out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really weird because like after that happened, the funny thing is this happened when I was 21. So when I was living with my family at the time, we went for the next morning to watch Mockingbird. What was it called again? It's a second movie from the Hunger Games. Yeah.
Someone help us out here.
Yeah, so it's like we were in the movie and it was really intense, right? I was like in the middle of the movie and my phone is exploding. My best friend's going like, dude, come online now. Like everyone on Facebook was tagging me. They're like, I know the guy that made this game. I'm like, who are you? So this thing just exploded out of the blue. Like it was extraordinarily stressing actually. So like if you guys build a great product, it's going to be, I'm assuming, a lot more stressing had you failed, because had you failed, well, you just sit around and deal with you can quantify your failures. But when something succeeds, it's like, okay, it's rolling now. So there's going to be a string of failures, such as people not finding the link, or maybe your buttons aren't working. And then you're going to see PewDiePie, glitch the app. And I'm like, damn it. So yeah, it's really, so yeah, anyway, so that happened. And most of my focus is still within UX and UI. I've learned a lot since then.
Nice, thank you for that little introduction there, Rufa. Guys, remember, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or post it in the chat, and we'll come around to it. Today is really, again, about you. And as I mentioned there, River's really, really hands-on. So if you want to ask him about any particular software or technology or something like that, this is your chance. River, I want to know, like, fundamentally, we'll start with a more basic question. What does UX mean to you?
Sure. So generally, there are many ways you can go about it, but I believe that it's possible to find your own philosophy, because the idea of UX is that you're trying to create some kind of experience, and that doesn't necessarily just mean like a button or text or the look of a page, but that can also involve audio. And audio isn't used enough in any industry for what I'm saying. So in our experience as game developers, since we don't have much of a team and we didn't understand the idea of a startup back then, we were the audio person, we were the graphics designer, we were the programmer and the animator. So for me personally, UX is like this whole experience where I animate, I code it, I design the buttons, I determine the text, and I focus as much as I can on spacing. So in my opinion, so it's a good thing to understand that for every button that you create for your product, for every word that you add to your text, that's going to reduce engagement. So at some point, it's going to plateau. If you have Google Analytics installed, if it's a website, if it's an app, whatever it is, over time, it's going to go from 100% retention, and it's going to decline, decline, decline. And if you're lucky, it will plateau at maybe 50%, 30%, or 10%. And the question is, what can I do to maintain the interest of these people? Assume by default, no one cares about your product. Doesn't matter how beautiful it is. And I try my best to make it as beautiful as possible. What they want is, if it's a food app, I just want a banana. I just want like some food immediately. So the idea is, can you minimize as many pages as possible? Can you just create one page to initialize that service or product that you're trying to create? Because if you do that, this is the definition of innovation. Also loads of folks go around tossing the word innovation, never really understanding what it means. What it means directly is having your product deliver an outcome from A to B as quickly as possible. So for example, if it takes like 7 clicks to start an event on Facebook, at DORE, we shrunk it down to relatively 1 or 2. So that's the definition of innovation. People are like, oh, that's so cool. I made that event so quickly. Yeah, so there you go. That's one way to look at it. That's the way I like to look at it.
Nice. Thanks for that brief introduction. I want to throw to a question from, they ask, which are the best programming languages to start with if you want to learn code?
Which market are you interested in?
Do you want to maybe just clarify that, your question? They say any market. Maybe you can talk about from because we're talking to you and your experience. So talk about your experience.
Sure. But I have colleagues that work in many different languages as well. And we have a lot of these talks about which is the superior programming language. There's no such thing. If like all programming languages allow you to create whatever it is that you want to create, the majority of them, sorry. And you should really not focus on the tool, but rather the problem, right? Because if you're focusing on the tool is going to be updated, and the next book is going to change. And if you learn specific methodology, if you learn like trends, current industries, language A is better than language B, things will flip. Like Python was not popular in 2014. Today, it's like the king language right now. I've been stuck with C# personally, just because I'm used to it, just because I'm good at it. So I kept working since 2013. It's not really that popular, but I'm making products that I believe have significant impact. So in my opinion, what I think it would be a good idea if you would try to find programming languages that are the easiest to learn. That's my personal opinion. And specifically, if you're not good at code, and I'm not that good at code, I highly recommend that you use visual scripting tools. Right. So this is like when you've seen like advertisements for some schooling, some teenagers or people in school or university. It's like they move blocks around and they connect it to create sort of some kind of logic, like turning on a light or moving a dinosaur from like the first space to the second space. It's like you may see these in some videos. That's visual scripting, and it's as powerful as coding, and it's way more accessible for designers such as myself. Had it not been for visual scripting, I would have not been a developer. And over time, that makes me get better at C# and just programming in general. But the bulk of my work is in visual scripting. So I highly recommend finding any visual scripting tools. Personally, I use something called Playmaker. That's exclusive to Unity, and Unity is the game engine. So I'll type that down for you. So Playmaker, and that's inside the Unity 3D engine. Now, the Unity 3D engine used to be solely for game development, and that's still a big part of it, but overwhelmingly it's been used for architecture, for display of rooms, cars, interior design. It's been going all over now. So I highly recommend these two tools. You'll find Playmaker inside of Unity 3D.
Thanks for that, Ruva. You want to add something?
Sorry?
I was about to jump in there, but did you want to add something else to your answer?
No, not really. Just Unity 3D is Danish.
Yeah.
It's like the second most popular engine. It's Danish, so support the ecosystem. It's wonderful. It's the simplest engine out there. I really love it.
I didn't know that. Good to know. We've got a question from. So we'll go to first, and then after that.
So there were two. I'm going to recommend the later one because the first one was embarrassing. The second one was called Old TV. So I'm going to type that on chat. You can find that on the Steam store or Android or the App Store. So there's nothing inherently special about where I took inspiration from. But if you're asking particularly for the first game that I made, I really like first-person games. So ones that are, because that's much more relative. And I always like designing products that are really relative to the individual. So back then it was like first-person mystery games. So it's like, you're locked in a room, some antagonist locked you for some reason. You have to find the key somewhere. Look, at the thing about the games that I was making, the reason why I'm in social apps right now is because it wasn't so much I was trying to make games, but I was trying to gamify psychology. So with the first game, Only If, it was more about taking idioms and trying to make it as literal as possible. An example would be there's a level where the protagonist swears at the antagonist. And so the antagonist says, you're trash talking, basically. So what happens is the protagonist loses his voice, and the antagonist basically takes his voice and he throws it in these trash bins, and you have to, like, piece by piece find like bits of your voice in every trash can that you that you explore. Yeah, it was basically that. And the same with Old TV. You'll see that it's the Stroop test, if you guys heard of it. It's like when you see you might have seen it on Facebook a few years ago. It's like red, but the color is green, and you have to say if that's right or not, or like blue in the color of yellow or something, and you got to say if that's right or not. So I took that idea and I gamified it to try and make it a game, and people really liked it. The first one had mixed reviews, but Old TV was highly successful, and the reason for that was because I focused on one idea, whereas the game prior was like so many ideas. And in that process, I learned people just want to get, what is the designer trying to say? And that's why I was saying, the more buttons you add, the more features you add, the more text and whatever, although you're beautifying it, you can really create content paralysis. That's a real thing. And Facebook is such a fantastic example of that. So just focus on a singular vision and deliver it as fast as possible, as powerfully as possible, as clear as possible. Like I understand we can be creatives and we'll think of so many different ideas, but like put all that aside. You need to make one idea work, because if that one idea doesn't work, if you made it kind of work and then move on to the next thing, what you're making is like bits of rice, basically. You want a steak, right? You want one idea that is easily digestible. That's my recommendation.
Sorry, you've got your hand up. What's your question?
So I'm obviously not in these markets, so I can't really advise specifically, but just to give you the overall reason why I was saying, you may want to consider audio, is because it's a part of the experience of being alive. It's part of existing. If you're removing audio, you're removing a dimension. We're taught at like primary school, or rather preschool, like our 5 senses, that we're designing products that only use one. What's going on? So you can include so much more experience if you add more and more senses. Now, taste is a difficult one, and I don't know how to go out with this one. But since audio is already there, you can be distinctive. And what you always want to do when it comes to creating any product, whatever it is you ought to seek uniqueness. Don't compete. Like school is all about, and I'm not a big fan of school, so sorry about that, but school is all about preparing you for like a world of competition. And that's exactly why so many people can't find jobs. you know, I was fired from like 3 different jobs, trying to land one. I was horrible at school. So I didn't feel too bright growing up, but like the moment I started doing whatever it is that I wanted to do, like PewDiePie plays my game, my game's career gets kickstarted. I start making products left and right. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not that stupid. So it turns out that if you have a uniqueness, I highly advise you capitalize on it. So try to make things that you really like, because if you don't like it, you're going to give up. There's a lot of stress when building products, not just pre-launch, but post-launch as well, especially if you're making a website.
So you've got a bit of a soft deadline, so we might run a little over 10. But I wanted to ask you there, how do you structure yourself on a day-to-day basis? You know, what sort of tools do you use, or you know, when you come in, how do you get yourself in the mindset?
So is that more project management, are we speaking, or?
Yeah, somewhat, or take it as you want. You know, do you fire up, you know, do you fire up a certain software straight away and just like launch in, or kind of trying to get into the mind of, you know, someone who might be designing or engineering throughout the day?
Sure. So although typically when you're running a small business, or even if you're a freelancer, I guess, you'll be wearing loads of hats in general. But like the beauty piece for me is UX. Like that's what brings me to life. This is what I love making. Yeah, so what I used to do for so many years is it wasn't really that structured. I would just get to work, open up Unity, and just make something I think is beautiful. And I would do that every single day. So because I love my work so much, I didn't really have really days off. I mean, I may have taken some either like randomly on a Monday or a Tuesday, but I don't have that many responsibilities outside of work at the moment. That might change in the future, but that's the situation for me at the moment. So over time, as now we're releasing DORE, so a few days right after, we've been trying to be a bit more structured in our work. So now when you're working with other people, you want to decide a time. You can't just come in and just like whenever you want and decide when to work, especially if there's money involved. And in this regard, I always start with him at 1 or 2 p.m. every day. But I always make sure that I do my work at 10 or 11 a.m. every day. So I prepare my work for him. He's like the other programmer. He takes a look at it. We talk for 15, 20 minutes. We start the rest of the work until 8 or 9 p.m. That's almost every single day for us. And although that might sound stressful, that's why I was saying, if you choose something that you love to do, you automate the hard work because it feels like a game, or it feels like something that you love to do.
Nice. I think I'm sure that resonates with some people in terms of being, owning your responsibilities to other people. Having time. Yeah.
Sure. And let me get a bit more specific. So I can recommend tools such as Trello. So Trello is a fantastic way to, if you haven't used it, highly recommend it. And you have used it, but we're like on the fence on it, it's really, really good for structuring your tasks. And to keep using Trello, my advice is try to make it as simple as possible. I know it's expandable and you can make a lot, but that can really suffocate you over time. We learned that just make things really easy, like planning, doing, done. That's it. And have maybe a wish list if you have like so many different ideas. And just move it across, make it as simple as possible. Because the more complex you're making your planning phase, the more detached you're going to be from it. And like, oh, I can't even bother because there's a product to focus on. No, it's important to organize. And to make sure that outcome happens, you need to make your Trello as simple as possible. Yeah, that's the minimum.
Nice. Yeah, I've used Trello in the past, and I like it for its simplicity. It's almost like the old Post-its on the wall, moving them across.
Yeah.
Hey guys, if there's any questions or anything you'd like, maybe River to demonstrate, maybe he can show you how to draw something. I don't know, or what you're after. Just chuck it in the chat. Feel free to ask, because as I mentioned, yeah, he's on the cold face. You write the name of the tool here. Which tool?
Yeah, so it's called Trello.
Trello, yeah. It's got blue and white branding.
The 4 tools that I always use every day is, so I'm going to write that down. That's Unity 3D. Photoshop, Trello, and Audacity. So apart from ET3D, the rest are relatively simple. Audacity is because I always use audio in my work. It gives a new dimension to my work, and it really immerses loads of people into the product. And we want to increase engagement as much as possible. So that's for me.
Awesome, thanks. River, what do you see? You talked a bit about your philosophy. Actually, I'm going to throw it to you. Have a question.
So I actually try to avoid Photoshop as much as I can because it's more on designing buttons. But I use that solely to create the buttons that I want to make, or like warnings or like notes and things like that. So as an example, actually, let me share my screen if that's okay. Let me know if you guys can see it. Optimize for video, show sound. Load the right scene here. So what you're seeing here is DORE. This is the current social app that we're developing in a game engine. It's a lot more fun to develop it this way. But let me just show you what that looks like. I'm going to keep the audio muted, or actually let me enable the audio just so you guys can hear it. Yeah. So let me show you what this looks like, and you'll see the buttons that I was talking about. This was all made in Photoshop. Oh, sorry. All the buttons that you see are made in Photoshop. Any warnings that you see are made in Photoshop as well. But apart from that, everything else was native to the engine. Select one of the activities. Let's say you want to go for jogging. It shows you the meet spots where that's happening today. You choose let's go. And it matches you with a group, or now it's trying to find you a group of people to match with. In online video games, it's really popular to like press play and then you match with a group of people. So we're taking the same idea here. But basically whatever you're seeing over here is made in Photoshop. And the way I made those buttons is literally just take the default brush tool, like drop a spot, and then just drag it, and then smoothen out the edges, and you get this result. Something looks pretty fun. Just reduce the alpha over time, make it a bit transparent, and just put the text above it, cut through, and that's it. You get basically what's over here. There's a little bit of a shadow over here on these texts, by the way. So that depends on your use case. Like if you're using actual dynamic lighting in the engine, and maybe creating fake shadows like what you're seeing on the buttons is not a good idea. So you always want to keep that in mind. My opinion personally is try to stick as much as possible with like live rendering as much as possible. And loads of people will tell you that's a bad idea because that's going to impact performance. But in my opinion, if this is a social app, then it makes Facebook look like it was something from the 90s. In terms of graphics, audio, and I hope from a social tense as well.
Wow, that was really nice to see. Thanks.
No worries. I can literally show you what I was talking about the button thing. Do you guys want to see that? Yeah? Am I getting thumbs up? All right, loads of thumbs up. All right, let's go. Let's load up Photoshop just to show you guys exactly what this looks like. It's stupid simple. This is the perfect example of it's not about the tool. So let me get this. Yeah, I guess we'll keep it white, whatever. So this is if you just got Photoshop. So I've got this one, let's say, yeah, 400, fine. Actually, let me just recreate what I made. All right, so let's make that white, transparent background. All right, pay attention to what I'm doing here. So it's just one click. Then you just duplicate that and you drag it. Then you make a third layer and you just measure, like this is not that accurate, but it just gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. So try to like measure, draw a line between those two things and then drag it down so that it's equal on the bottom as well. And remember, this is on the third layer. So when I press this, it covers the entire thing. And you're basically done. This is exactly the button in DORE. And now I'm just going to collapse all these together. And actually, just so we can see it better, I'm just going to make the background orange. Okay. Yeah, see, it wasn't perfect in the bottom there, but I'm just going to move on with the example. Yeah, so now you just put in, let's say, a text. Let's say we're going to make something here called partying. Let's make the font a bit smaller. And what I personally do is I use like measurements from like top to bottom to make sure that's equal, but we're just gonna move on with the example right now. Spacing is important. So that's good. So what I do is after creating this text, I just press B and click here, and we'll ask you to deconstruct this text layer. So now you just select the entire thing, then right click, select inverse, then collapse it by pressing Command E into the layer that's behind it. So that's Command E. Now you press delete and you puncture through it as you saw. So now you can get away by just reducing the output to 50, and it's roughly close to what I was doing, but typically I bring it down to 25. Then I personally duplicate the layer 2 times. Then for the bottom layer, I want to make it shadowy, so I make that dark. Then I add a Gaussian blur to it. You don't have to do what I'm doing here, but I'm just showing you what I do. And just to show that the sun is coming from the top, you want to hold Shift and push it down 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And you get the magic wand tool. You get the size of the button itself above. Go back down, press delete, and voila, it's done. So like that looks more or less exactly like that. So I'm just showing you, it's really easy to make this thing. It takes a long time sort of to figure out what this first looks like, but once you get it, it becomes really, really easy. And I highly recommend that you have simple processes. But yeah, that's basically the entire thing.
Wow, that was really fun. I found that fun. It was nice to see.
Yeah, that's my job every day, Vince. Like, loads of messing around and really simple. So I love it.
Well, thanks for that quick demonstration. I think we've got a raised hand from. The floor's yours.
Yeah, sure. So actually, you don't have to listen to exactly what I was doing. So it's important that you follow whatever it is that you want to do. Right. So I did it in 3 areas because I was trying to achieve a certain effect, and that was that I wanted the shadow layer, and then I wanted the base layer, then I wanted the highlight layer.
Okay.
And the only reason I added the highlight layer is simply because ideally you just want the base and the shadow, but in my engine when I put it in there, you can't see it. It's not clear enough. And that's the only reason why I duplicated the 3rd time, right? But you really don't have to pay attention to literally the sequence of what I'm doing. You don't have to follow exactly what I'm doing. The important bit is that you understand the idea of what I'm trying to say. So you just said, I just create 1 layer, go for it, create a product with that. It's really important that you are happy of not just what you're doing, but how you're doing it. Like the process is where the stress is. Yeah, just if you make it in 1 layer, that's fine. Don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with that. So no worries. So layers don't make your life easier, actually. It depends on your problem. So I know they say that, but don't listen to them. just listen to whatever it is that you want to do. And if you find a need for a layer, do it. If you don't see it, do not do it. Right?
Okay.
So Riva, I asked a question earlier. You're on a desert island, or it's a deserted island, and you can take 3 UX graphic design tools with you. You can be very, very open in that. What do you take with you, Riva?
Sure. So I've listed it earlier by mistake. Unity 3D, Photoshop, Trello, and Audacity. But actually, if I would replace Audacity, because Audacity is really simple. I don't know if you guys heard of it. I I would replace Audacity for me personally with Logic Pro. But that's just because I've been using like Audacity so much. I'm like, okay, like I need to control what I'm making. So like when I was talking to Rita, telling her like, you know, if you don't see a problem, don't use more layers. And in the case of Audacity, I didn't need to make so many complexities, so many different layers and instruments and libraries. And I didn't need to necessarily learn all that. It wasn't until like, you know what, as also a musician, I was like, I really want to make a soundtrack for DORE. And if you guys heard the music, that was all composed by me. So yeah, so audio really means a lot to me when it comes to the experience. It's definitely, I mean, we have our five senses. We really ought to capitalize on it. So these are my 4 tools.
Yeah, and maybe thinking about like soft skills, like sort of outside of those hardcore things. What means a lot to you?
Can you give me an example of what you mean by soft skills?
Yeah, so like maybe something like, is it like curiosity, or in terms of your ability to collaborate with other people around you?
Oh, gotcha. More like work ethics or mindsets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So for me personally, what I love to do is, so I like to be as opportunistic as possible, but as long as it's within the timeline. So, and whenever when you're working with a team or anyone else, or even if you don't have a team and you listen to a customer or a friend or family member and whatever, chances are they're not going to have the exact same opinion that you have about anything, especially when it comes to product building. So I highly advise, and it's gonna discourage you at first for a while, and it's like a thing we'll need to mature into to understand how not to be discouraged when someone says, you know, oh, this sucks, I don't like this element of your UI or UX, or like the audio is crazy, and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't even make a soundtrack. Like these thoughts will come to you, but you should. It's as important that you listen to people very actively, but also to defend your vision. These two have to be equal, because a lot more people do too much of listening to their vision, and this is particularly the creatives. And then the people that are a lot more, let's say, rational, focus way too much on the data, where they don't have a vision, they don't have a direction. So success is both, and you have to do both. You have to have some kind of assumption, some kind of vision, and the data validates that assumption, right? And it's important when you're creating a page or a button to ask yourself, you know, I know I put a lot of effort into this, but does it actually achieve, you know, the opportunity that I'm searching for? Like I said, I made a beautiful like 3 pages as an example, and the experience is amazing, and it looks like the next whatever. But people just want to press one button. So if people keep saying that, if that's, as an example, if that's like the feedback that you keep going, you have to ditch that. And there were so many features I have not shown you guys that I put like my blood and soul into it. That is so beautiful. Actually, some of them even better than any features that you saw, but I scrapped it. Like it's disabled, like in the trash can, in the engine. So my recommendation to avoid, and I've made that mistake time and time again. So my recommendation is to first and foremost create like really sketchy looking simple buttons, just to test out. Don't make them beautiful necessarily, just to test out the flow. So this is more, we're talking wireframe now. Have we spoke about wireframe with the last speaker?
We had a question, but feel free to go on it. I think it's something that's been covered a bit in class and might be of interest to the people here.
Whoever doesn't know wireframe, just raise your hand, what wireframing is, and who already knows so whoever doesn't know wireframing. Oh, but sorry. All right, no worries. Okay, no worries. So what wireframing is basically, I think it's a good idea if I share this just so you can see this easy. So I'm going to use my best friend here, Paint. I love Paint. MS Paint. It's my favorite tool. You just get to the point, right? So what wireframing is basically, it's literally designing your product, your website, your app, securing, trying to come up with the outcome that you want as soon as possible, and trying to make sure that it works back and forth. And it's the best way. Wireframing is great because you don't get to spend like soundtrack and go, like I made horrible mistakes, like designing so many graphics and animations, etc. Instead, this way you get to validate, okay, does it do what I want it to do first? Then make it pretty. because if you're making it pretty every single time you try, you're going to exhaust yourself and you want to leave the industry. So here's what wireframing is, and I highly recommend you guys do this. Like, you can open up, you can use some tools online, personally, like Paint. So on the first page here, let's say you have like a name, and then you have like the password, and then you have like the go button. Then it goes to the next page that shows you, let's say you're making like a food product. So let's say this is like apples, and here you have, I don't know, trousers or something. Let's say you're like an e-commerce. So, and it's not supposed to look pretty. So if one of the things, so we spoke about two rules, that the first rule was that for every click and every button that you set in, you're going to lose engagement. That's just, we don't know why it happens. That's just the law of the universe. So over time, you must believe that as time goes on, for every interaction, your rate of engagement goes down. That's just how it is. And for every text and word that you put in, you're shifting their attention away. So as an example, if you want them to buy more of like these pairs here instead of these trousers, you have to put this front and center. I know you design in a way where you want it to be like a panel, scrollable panel and whatever, but if you're having a sale as an example, it's less effective to have like, hey, we're on sale over here and put a tag on this, but instead to put this front and center, like pop it up. Remember how when I had DORE and it's like you press go and the first thing it said was to automate people, you have to enable location services. That was fundamental. We needed them to enable their location services so that they can match with other people. So I put it front and center in the beginning. So those are things you want to take into account. Another thing you also want to take into account is never lock the user. So here I don't have a back button. So we have to put that in. There has to be free flow back and forth if there's meaning. So if there's no meaning, you don't have to add it. So the reason here would be like to have a back button so that a new user can log in, or if you want to change your account. Or it doesn't have to be back button. It can be something else like a cog button, and then you sign out. But in my opinion, you should make it as simple as possible, as big as possible. So yeah, this is basically wireframing, and then you just make more and more pages, and to make sure that it all recycles. Once you're done with this, you speak with your coworker, or you look at it yourself, or you speak with your friends or family members, and you see, does that flow perfectly? Does that do what it is that you want to do? Then you make it pretty. And that's where you should start. You shouldn't start making it pretty in the beginning. You could, if you just want to get the vibe in the beginning, but really don't go beyond the cover page if you do want to start with the graphics at first. So if you really want to draw and like create graphics, you can do that just for the first page, but then come back to this and continue to understand the look of the thing that you want to make in MS Paint, or I can recommend InVision online, which is a free tool.
So that very well. Do you have your hand up?
So I think you said two things that are really important. We're just gonna dissect them. So in the case of wireframing, this is not something you pitch to your clients. This is like the first thing to do. So this is before making it pretty. This is before doing anything. You shouldn't be opening up MS Paint like what I just did and show it to investors. That's a horrible idea. That's for the wireframing. So I was talking, whatever you heard, if you can try to apply it in the sense of, okay, I want to try and understand the thing that I was building. So this is all for you and your friends. And then in the case of, you said something really, really important, and that happens with me as well. You said that, I'm already having a hard time as a creative translating my idea to non-creatives. And that happens with me surprisingly a lot more than I expected. I could have sworn I was trying to be as immediate and rational as possible with this, meetup app. I mean, it clearly says go, it clearly says jogging. What's there to misunderstand? To my surprise, no one gets it. And so when I presented this to investors, they were like, yeah, but why would I use this? Like, what is this for? And in my mind, I'm like, we're trying to tackle Facebook and change this whole thing, but they couldn't understand it. So what's important is this is what I meant by listening to them, what they have to say, because then maybe it's not so much about what you're showing them, but rather it could be just what you're saying. So that was something that I learned over time. Instead of me telling them that this is a meetup app, and I've heard feedback. They keep saying, "Oh, but how is this good for me and my friends?" My mom said this, my friend said this, my cousin's friend said this. People around here are like, oh, this is a cool idea, but how do I do this with my friends? And I was like, wait a second, people want to use this with their friends. Why? Because the average person has friends, yet I designed this thing as if the average person doesn't have friends. Which is sort of my situation in Copenhagen at the moment. But so yeah, we're pivoting because the average person has friends, and that's a bigger market. And I'm like, okay, so if I translate that, then they'll get the idea of what I'm trying to do is to connect people, to get them out as possible. It doesn't matter too much to me that it's a random person. That could be the case, but the bigger market here is to focus on friends. So it's that's what I meant by just listening to what the customer is saying, because if we but don't listen to the points of like data crazy, because like if you ask Ford, there's a popular quote. Ford said, like I think 100 years ago, he's like, if I had asked what my customers wanted, they would have said, I want faster horses. But the guy inside created cars. So there is a truth to what they're saying, but maybe don't take it too literally. But it's so important that you do listen to what it is that they're saying, and then you use your creativity to design how it is that you want that to be. And you will still keep experiencing this for the rest of your life, which is why I'm recommending wireframe before you build features. There's a feature that's like that shows all the timing. So you guys saw there was one time for the activity. There's a feature that goes like I've designed like the piano for it. I've spent so much time on it, and no one's going to see it because that doesn't serve what it is that we're trying to do at the moment. At the moment, it's not even that we want it in the future. We do want to add timing options for people. But it was such a waste that I did this so early. So please, please, please wireframe and ask the customer, what is it that they want? What is it that they want? Then use your creativity to go like, okay, it'll be cool if we did it this way.
Thanks for that. We'll go to.
Sure, of course. So what I know isn't UX or UI exclusive. It's actually, it comes from somewhere else, and rather I fed this into my understanding of UI and UX, and this is from the understanding of how to develop, how to develop products and startups. So directly, remember when I was saying avoid competition as much as possible? So I'm just going to link you guys the talk, avoid competition, Peter Thiel. So it's a relatively long talk, and Peter Thiel is like a renowned investor and startup guy. He basically created PayPal back in the day with Elon Musk. And he's invested in many big products. He was the first external Facebook investor. So I highly recommend, and he has a very contrarian view to product development. He's a ridiculously innovative and contrarian person that has a lot of ideas and understandings of how to build products and how to build startups that avoid competition. Because so quite often in public culture, in pop culture, it's like when someone says the idea of monopoly, you immediately think it's a negative. That's not what it means. What monopoly means as a default is market share. And you can create market share by doing it unethically. And I oppose that 100%. You should not be doing that. If the customer is trying to not get out of the app or your business and they can't do anything with it, you should be designing a better product. But what a monopoly means is simply market share. So you want to design wonderful products that people love. Apple is a monopoly, right? And it's not competing with anyone else. That's why it's ahead. It's because it's competing with itself. And this is what you guys, in my opinion, should be doing. So check out that talk. You'll notice that he's talking less about, well, he's not talking about UX and UI at all, actually. But he does plant the ideas of how to avoid competition, how to think. And a lot of what he says is more theoretical, more digestible, more simple. So I highly recommend that one source as one example when it comes to avoiding competition. So it's important that you fuse different elements into your UI and UX. So if you stick to UI and UX, that's not what's going to make you unique. So I said, like, I was a musician and I fused that into my UI and UX. And in terms of understanding how to build better UI and UX, I was listening to people like Peter Thiel or people how to build better products and startups. So that feeds this mix, this sort of diversity is what creates your uniqueness. So really try to mix and match as much as possible, because if you're like, okay, UX, UI, you're going to get bored of that eventually. So you want to craft your space. You want to craft your uniqueness by fusing in whatever it is that you guys like: food, fashion, you can take principles from there and fuse it. Like personally, I like using physics to psychology principles. There's a physics principle called like the path of least resistance, where every particle, every human being, every animal takes the path of least resistance. And that is parallel to the thing that I was talking to you about, that like for every button that you make, every text that you make, you'll get lesser and lesser retention over time. And obviously, if you don't have things that are obvious, it's not in the path of least resistance. So they're going to go like, oh, if I can't, I don't care. I just want to, I'll talk to my friends. I'll do something else. So that's why people drop off. So mix and match. It will make you and your product much more unique. Sorry. All right, no worries. So I highly recommend that you don't show early prototypes or wireframes or mood boards or sketches to your stakeholders, clients, or any decision people. Assuming you are the decision maker, are you the decision maker in your company? So it's crucially important that you prove by showing, not by talking. And a mood board just takes a few minutes to put together a few things to try to convey an idea that you're trying to say. And the truth is, guys, I even built a full product here and people still don't understand what the hell I was talking about. So just to show you, like, the closer you are to the product that you want to create, and then you have to be more and more accurate with the product over time, the more likely that you're going to be convincing people to believe in you or to use your service. A great example of that is right now I've been talking about how to make the buttons. Imagine had I not shared my screen to show guys in Photoshop how that works. That's a lot less effective. So show, don't tell. So my opinion is just to try and get as close as possible to the product or the website that you want to build, as opposed to sketches and things like that to erect a decision from decision makers. But if you really, and just coming back regarding the relationship between mood boards and the wireframe, if you feel like that helps you, go for it. It's not my personal process, but if you feel like that helps you and that allows you to understand your product, 100% go for it. We all have our different ways of doing it. No worries.
Wow, I'm mindful of the time, so I don't want to hold you forever. But
no worries.
I've really enjoyed this, and I'm really happy with the diversity of the questions that have come from the floor. River, I want to give I think we do have to wrap it up at some point, unfortunately.
Of course.
But I want to give unless there's like any final questions, jump in now. I want to give the final word to you, River. Is there anything you'd like to share? We're a diverse group of UX students. Is there any final tips, tricks, any final word that you want to share with us?
Well, I can give two. Two things. One that's more professional and one that's personal. That I think will apply for all of us in terms of building a product or UI or UX. Like we heard things such as, for example, when Magda was talking about mood boards to convey an idea, like just the fact that we lean more towards trying to show a sketch or a mood board to decision makers as opposed to building product shows that the product is like, oh, it's some Mona Lisa that takes a lot of time. I highly advise, guys, do not build your Mona Lisa. Don't do it. Like speaking as a perfectionist, or rather ex-perfectionist, the beauty comes in the quantity of good choices. So you want to move down from being the first page has to be the greatest thing anyone has ever seen. The second page has to be the greatest thing as anyone ever seen. If you keep doing that, it is not sustainable. Doesn't matter what you think about it. Over time, you need to make good consecutive decisions. Okay, I'm done with the page. It's 60, 70% out of 100 good. Same with the second page, same with the third page. And as you do this, you build the product very quickly. If you build a website within 2 to 3 days, instead of it taking you a month or even longer, that's literally the definition of innovative. Because what that means is that then you can come back and go like, oh, I can make it even prettier now because it's working and because people want it, right? So don't be a perfectionist, make good consecutive decisions. And this is more about self-control than anything else. You have to destroy a part of your soul going like, okay, but I want it. No, just move on. This is something my other programmer has taught me, who's sold 75+ products. And I'm so happy to have him on the team. because I was not like that at all. This is just 2-3 months ago. I was not like this. And personally, the personal part is in regards to listening to opinion, wherever it comes from. I highly advise to, if you ever hear criticism, or if you ever hear anyone arguing with you and you're a team or anything like that, like really try to hold back arguing back. Just listen to everything they have to say, because if you really want to succeed, you need to make sure that you understand how you're going to be making money. You understand that the decisions that you're taking are not only rational, but in your best interest. If it's very likely, by the way, that because my programmer is all about money, he's also a project manager. He would say, but this doesn't make money. Like, why you want to do B2C when the money seems to be B2B? So what I'm saying is he wanted to tilt DORE, to change DORE, the product that was showing you, from about meeting people for like an experience to you should focus on the businesses. And then he's like redesigned the whole app. I'm like, I don't want to do that. So we were arguing at first, but then I was like, wait a second, he miscommunicated. All he wants is to follow, where the money is. So what I told him, how about we focus completely on B2C and try to make money that way? He was like, okay, great. So then suddenly making money and your vision are going in one direction. And we stopped having arguments. Now we're having a wonderful time designing beautiful features for DORE under that vision. So please, please, please listen and avoid arguments as much as possible. Like startups or building products is way more about resilience than it is about exploding in the beginning and trying to be a supernova. So just relax, take it easy, listen, don't take things offensively. I know it's hard, but don't take things offensively whenever someone says something. And if you do feel any anger, direct it towards you that you are not listening. This is what I personally do for myself. That allows me to listen, maximize, and really build great things as we go. Where the name DORE, then he asks where the name DORE comes from. It's the words do more put together. It started as a dating app after a horrible breakup in 2017. Then as I asked myself, how do you, why were you attracted to people? What attracts me to a person? It's because of who they are. And I'm like, well, what defines them as a person? Well, fundamentally, it's what they did and more actually what they do. So we're like, oh, wait, this shouldn't be a dating app. This should be a doing app. So we put the words do more together, and we're about socializing right now. You can check it out here if you want. So it's DORE.app. Sorry, I'm advertising this.
No, that's totally. I think it's relevant that people have a look and see what you've been describing this whole time. Thank you, River. I am so happy that we brought you on board to have this talk with us. I think you're a great example and ambassador of our community here. You're always very open, and it's just been fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.